Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to League Racing TV for round 17 and 18 of the first season of the TTML Sprint League. My name is Aidan Carter, otherwise known as Carmentis. I'll be taking you through proceedings on a Wednesday night as per usual, and joining me in the commentary box alongside me for the first time this year in 2021 is Luke Etheridge. Luke, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing very well, thanks. Happy New Year to yourself, Aidan. Happy New Year to everyone that's watching at home, and hopefully we'll be able to kick this off with some really good racing. I'm not the biggest fan of the Russian Grand Prix track, and I think anyone who's ever listened to me commentate on any league around the Russian Grand Prix circuit probably knows that, but it's maybe got a potential for some interesting racing. There's always a chance of penalties. The layout, you don't really get punished for running wide around this track in a similar fashion to like Paul Ricard and some other circuits, so quite often you do see a high amount of penalties. And that could cost people tonight. We saw it cost Perpetuum the win last time out at Singapore. He's not here tonight, so it's a brilliant opportunity for Scuba over the Russian Grand Prix and the Japanese one that we'll be having afterwards to take a big lead in the championship.
Yeah, it definitely is a great opportunity, like you say, for Scuba having Perpetuum not here. And Perpetuum, you've got to say, has been... Actually, no, as you say that, Perpetuum is here. So Perpetuum has actually joined in the process of us talking about him not being here. So scrap all that. Great opportunity now for both of these drivers then to really go at it for the top of the championship, actually. And this is the first time... I want to say this is the first time, maybe since the opening round or the opening night of the season, that Scuba and Perpetuum have raced alongside each other, and they've not really been... It's either Scuba's here and Perpetuum's not, or Perpetuum's here and Scuba's not. So it'll be interesting to see whether they actually get to race each other on track today. But the good thing for the TTML Sprint League tonight is we've got a few more drivers in here tonight, and we've got a few drivers in here that could get in the middle of that mix as well, especially the likes of Honey Badger and Cam.
Yeah, Honey Badger finally got his first podium of the season last time out. It seems amazing for someone who we know to be as quick as him. He's only 10th in the championship at the moment, and there's quite a few drivers ahead of him who have actually attended less races. It's just, for one reason or another, he keeps getting involved in incidents. I mean, he admits it himself. It was an inexplicable mistake last time out at the Singapore Grand Prix, just going off the circuit, oversteering originally, then corrected it, crashing into the wall on the pit straight at Singapore from a race. Now, he probably could have won there. He got the podium in Italy. Like you said as well, Cam, he's a very quick driver. He's had 5 pole positions so far this season. You don't do that without being exceptionally fast. And we've got a couple of Sieges here as well. He's not shown his pace this year, perhaps like we would have expected, but on his day, he can be an incredibly quick driver. And we've got a few new faces as well. We had Faxland take his first victory last time around. Things could really get stirred up. We'll have to wait and see how it goes.
Yeah, and another thing to note as well, just looking in the stream chat at the moment, I believe Recon is joining for today's couple of races. This is why we're a little bit delayed for the start. But Recon, who obviously took part, and I believe I wanted to say the Hungary and the Belgium rounds that he took part in. It definitely was, yeah. And Hungary, he went on to win that race in emphatic style, and then obviously spun out towards the end of the race in the Belgium round. So that's another person that could be thrown into the mix today. So he's actually just joined the lobby. So got to look out for Recon as well. That's another person to look out for, and could really be a thorn in the side for our 2 championship protagonists.
Yeah, definitely. He's a reserve driver, so he's got nothing to lose, everything to gain from all of this. Then you've got those drivers that have been consistent all season and have generally scored good results. Like Graham, he's only 23 points off the championship lead at the moment, and you would not expect him to beat Scuba and Perpetuum in a straight race. But if they have some accident or whatever, it's 25%. There's no safety cars. You can't recover from accidents anywhere near as well. And if they end up missing a couple of races, you never know. Someone like Graham or Tekken could end up taking this championship. We'll just have to wait and see how it goes. But there's some very quick drivers, which probably means the tactic we've seen a couple of weeks ago and last week, when there's not been as many, of, I'll just go on the mediums and start just outside the top 10. Whereas last week you might have started 11th or 12th. Tonight you're probably starting 15th or 16th. So it's a different mindset. Some of these fast drivers, like Perpetuum and possibly Scuba and Recon as well, will have to go into these races with.
Yeah, definitely, and we obviously head into the Sochi Autodrome for the first round of the night, and so the Sochi Autodrome, especially on these Codemasters games, has been synonymous, and in real life actually, it's been synonymous of while there's quite a few corners around this track, it is very easy on the tyres, this circuit is, isn't it? It's so smooth, there's barely any bumps in the circuit, there's barely any undulation change, the curbs are they're relatively more cosmetic really than anything else. They're so kind of, there's not really a lot to them, so the tyres around this circuit don't take that much of a pounding. So those going for the medium tyres maybe in qualifying are really going to struggle, because the soft tyres would probably be the favoured tyre around this circuit.
Yeah, and we've said it so many times before about this league. 25% racers, it doesn't seem to be double the tyre wear of a 50%. It seems to be slightly less than double, so you can get away with strategies even more. So I'd say both of these races are probably going to be definite soft mediums. It's funny you were mentioning the curves not being too severe. Turn 8 is the one to watch out for. If you hit that curve wrong around this track, you take off completely. Hopefully we won't see anyone do that in qualifying or the race, because if it happens in the race on lap 1, you could easily take someone out, and you could be steering as much as possible, and you'd have no chance of stopping it.
Yeah, definitely. We're going to ride on board, though, with Maze. I believe we're on board with 4 qualifying, so he's going to be heading us around a lap at the Sochi Autodrome through the kink of Turn 1, not really a corner in these modern Formula 1 cars, down to the first proper corner on the track, Turn 2. This is one of the longest runs down to the first braking zone on a track this season, through Turn 2 and then through the kink of 3 on the exit. Through now the long Turn 4, really, really long corner. This one is flat out completely. Great overtaking opportunity if you're still running side by side out of 3. And now into Turn 5. Sorry, that's Turn 4. That was Turn 3 we just went through. Into Turn 5, the end of the first sector. And Maze is up there at the moment in 6th place. Had a good start to the lap so far in the Mercedes. He's now coming through the kink of 6 and then into Turn 7. Usually a 5th gear corner, this one. Go down into 4th gear just to get the car turned in. Now into Turn 8. Remember, don't hit that inside curb, just like Luke mentioned. Keeps away from it nicely, and Maze keeping this lap nice and neat. Actually, he's running up in the top 4 as it stands. He's had a good lap so far. Looks like he's looking more confident around this pack than he has done at points this season. Silas is out of the session, might have invalidated at some point around the lap. Down this back straight then through the kink of 11 and now into the kink of Turn 12 before the braking zone for 13. So easy to lock up an inside front tyre here, but Maze gets it stopped nicely. Now into the final sector, the more technical part of the lap. A lot less straights here, more corners in quick succession. This off camber left-handed corner of Turn 15, so easy to get wrong, but Maze gets that quite nicely stopped. And now into the penultimate 2 corners, 17 and 18. Don't hit the inside curb of 17 either. That can throw you off the course just like Turn 8 does, but Maze keeps away from it. And now into the final corner, short run to the line. It's going to be Cam again on pole position by a country mile. What a lap from Cam. 1 second clear of our previous race winner, Faxland, who gets second, and Maze with by far his best qualifying of the season in 3rd.
Yeah, very respectable job from Maze. Neymar not too far behind him, and we did have a few drivers go for that medium tyre, that alternate strategy. Honey Badger, I think he was the only one to actually get into the top 10 on that alternate strategy, so he could be one to watch out for in the race. And Scuba and Perpetuum both getting disqualified from their laps. This is going to be very interesting indeed.
Yeah, definitely is. So here's a run through then of the order of qualifying. It's Cam yet again on pole position with a great opportunity to try and convert a win in the first round of the evening. He hasn't done that so far this season. It's been his bit of his Achilles heel. Faxland in second place then, once again showing good form after coming off the back of a win last time round, looking to maybe try and get his second win this evening. Maze in 3rd ahead of Neymar in 4th. Honey Badger, like you mentioned, first driver on the mediums in 5th ahead of Graham in 6th. Recon in 7th on the softs. So you would imagine he probably made a mistake on his lap with him being 2 seconds off pole. And it's Nathan and Tekken, the only other 2 people to set valid times. Tekken was on the mediums. Raul Keogh, new driver to the league. Dekeeper, Perpetuum, Scuba, Josh Fletcher, Siege and Silas all invalidated their times. Nearly half the field invalidated their times. Like I said earlier on, it is so easy to do so because this circuit barely punishes you for going off.
Yeah, I mean, when I've ran my own career modes on regular corner cutting, I basically end up making my own circuit up around here. I'm nowhere near the white lines because it's a quicker way round the corner. Racing drivers push it to the absolute limits, and it's funny how no one really invalidates the track too much at Monaco, where at 99% of the corners, if you go slightly wide, you're going to end up hitting a wall. This circuit really doesn't punish you. It's one of the shortest runs to Turn 1 on the calendar, but as you said, Turn 1's not really a corner. It's flat out in a modern Formula 1 car. So starting in second place isn't really too bad here, because you mentioned it's such a long run down towards Turn 2, the first proper braking zone. If Faxland gets a good start, he could be right on the back of Cam and have a go into Turn 2, which is definitely one of the most awkward corners on the Formula 1 calendar. It always seems to cause some trouble. I'll be very surprised if everyone makes it through there cleanly on lap 1.
Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth. That's exactly what I was going to say. Turn 2 around this circuit, it tightens up so much on the exit, especially with that little kink coming out of the corner that isn't really counted as a corner. That little kink out of it. It's such a bizarre piece of track design. I know I don't want to rail on too much about the Sochi track design because I could go on, I think, for days about it. I think I agree with you, like you said at the start of the stream. This is just not really a popular circuit with anyone, but let alone drivers in real life or on the game or fans of Formula 1. It is probably one of the most hated circuits in recent Formula 1 history, and that kind of track design at turn 2 is the exact kind of example of it, really, isn't it? It's so difficult, even if you're trying to run side by side with someone, to make an overtake stick there and keep the car on the road.
Yeah, and I think I've heard it mentioned that maybe they should change it somewhere to a bit like what Bahrain done at turn 1 and turn 2. You sort of get the feeling with this track, there was so much space, obviously, with it being built around the Olympic Park. You sort of get the feeling, and this is what they came up with. You're a bit disappointed, sort of in a way of Yas Marino. You get given a blank canvas. You'd have expected something better. That being said, it does definitely provide overtaking opportunities. 2 DRS zones, one into turn 2, and then the second one on the back straight into turn 13, which is actually quite a tricky corner, especially if you don't run ABS, because you're sort of still turning left through turn 12 as you have to get on the brakes, and that can catch people out at times.
It really can, yeah. It is so difficult to get that absolutely spot on. May's got it nicely done in qualifying, but we've got to keep an eye out for it in the race. And we've seen in real life so many people make accidents and mistakes into that corner. Obviously, most likely to be Carlos Sainz in practice. I believe it was that in 2016 or 15 when he hit the brakes through the kink of 12 and the car just speared left into the wall. Such a frightening accident that one was. It was great to see him walk out of that one with barely any injuries. But yeah, it's so easy to get that corner on the brakes. And the corner they just went through there, turn 15 as well. Obviously, it comes off the runoff of a couple corners where drivers might be running side by side. It's kind of really the end of the real overtaking opportunities on the circuit, but with it being off camber, so easy to get that corner wrong.
Yeah, you see drivers spin it quite often around there. You see people go for moves that aren't really on at that corner. It's like you said, it is off camber ever so slightly, and it just makes it a bit more trickier, and the final sector after that is pretty much follow the leader. You can see some great moves coming out of turn 2 all the way around turn 3 into turn 4 as well, and quite often drivers still going side by side, perhaps when they shouldn't, and perhaps just picking up an extra penalty. But this should be a really good race. We've got a mixture of tyre strategies. Perpetuum and Scuba both on the mediums outside of the top 10, as is Siege. It'll be interesting to see how they work their way up the order, and can Cam get that elusive victory in the first race of the evening.
Yeah, let's wait and see what he can pull off, and who's going to get the best one down to turn 2. That is crucial in this race. The lights are on ahead of the drivers. A really long hold, but we are away, and it looks like it's a fairly even start at the front. It's actually Neymar who's gone backwards off the line. He's plummeted already off the start. Recon's had a great start, so has Honey Badger. They're 3 wide, nearly 4 wide, running down towards turn 2. Fatsan's tucked in the slipstream behind Cam into turn 1. He's going to try and dive down the inside line, but they can't get it stopped. They're still 4 wide through turn 2. Somehow they get away with barely any contact, and Recon's the one that's come out on top, out in 3rd place, but he was ahead of Honey Badger off the circuit, so I wonder whether he might have to give that place back. Honey Badger up to 4th on the mediums. Maze is down to 5th. Nathan's had a good start. He's now just past Maze round the outside of 4. He's up into 5th place, so both runners have had a good start to this race. Graham 7th. Neymar's had a shocker off the line from 4th on the grid. Now running down in 8th place. To keep her in 9th, trying to get past, and oh my word, nearly goes into the wall on the outside there at turn 7, but just about gets away with it, and they're still going 3 wide down towards turn 8. Everyone stays away from the curb, and Maze just about holds on to 6th place. Perpetuum is trying to work his way through all of this carnage, but it is just that. It is just carnage. He can't find a gap to work his way through, and now Tekken is trying to get up and alongside him as well. Scuba's not had the best of starts in the Red Bull. Josh Fletcher is now running side by side with him as they run down towards turn 13. Raukio has had a poor start as well in the other Red Bull. He's dropped to last place. It's a bit of a chaotic start to this one. Everyone has almost got through it cleanly apart from Raukio, but my word, that was a crazy start, and Recon is the one that made the best of it.
Yeah, Recon got an absolutely fantastic start. I wonder if he's Bottas'd for start and just sort of guessed when the lights were going to go out and came up trumps, because there's no way he got such a good start. He was a long way down the order. I think he's gained, what, 6, 7 positions? 4 positions off the start line. Absolutely fantastic start from Recon. Regarding that turn 2, I think he tried to take the corner. It's just obviously there was 4 wide, and you can't go 4 wide. Someone had to be off the circuit. Honey Badger was part off the circuit. I think Maze was still on the track. I'm not sure who else was alongside them, but yeah, a chaotic start, and it's amazing that it looks like nearly everyone has got through unscathed. I think Siege, I'm not sure whether that was a strategic choice or he has actually changed his front wing, I imagine. It is front wing damage, and a bit like Honey Badger, just things don't seem to be going well for Maze in this sprint league. I think Valkyrie actually wasn't there when the start lights went out, because I know he got disqualified from the formation lap, so I'm not sure if he was otherwise occupied for whatever reason. Perpetuum got very lucky, actually. He nearly made contact with the back of the keeper and was just able to pull out of it in time. Otherwise, he could have well spun round and broken his front wing. But a pretty tidy start, we could say. Not as tidy as you might have expected at some times. Cam seems to have just opened up a gap ever so slightly, and he does this quite often. He builds a big gap but burns up his ERS in the process.
Yeah, that's definitely one thing to look out for. Another one to look out for, the battle between the Alpha Tower, is Neymar trying to recover after a really poor start down the inside towards turn 13. Graham doesn't give him a lot of space, and they just about get away with it. Graham holds on to 7th place, but this is where the cube is really starting to form now. Behind Graham, Neymar, Perpetuum, Josh, Scuba into Keeper as well, and Scuba's trying to go for the move onto Keeper, I think. Actually, Keeper's just pulled off to the side of the track. I wonder if he's made a little bit of an error and he's broken his front wing as Keeper in the McLaren. I think he's going to dive into the pit lane. Yes, he is. He darts into the pit lane. So does Honey Badger. Very early on for Honey Badger. Now this, to me, it looks like a strategic call at the end of lap 2 to come in for a set of softs. We know how good the softs are around this track, and we've seen at previous races that the medium tyres just aren't anywhere near as good as the soft tyres in race conditions. So Honey Badger may be stepping out of the queue of cars, trying to find some clean air and get some good laps in.
Yeah, this is a very interesting move indeed. I mean, Perpetuum doesn't seem to be struggling on the soft tyres at the moment. He's now up into 7th place. We've had a move further up the field as well. Recon gets his way past Faxland into 2nd. So can we see Recon maybe close up onto the back of the gap? I'm still surprised Honey Badger came into the pit that early on for a set of the soft tyres. He's got to be struggling towards the end, even in these 25% races. He's going to have to do 11 laps on them. That's a really tall order, if you ask me. We'll see how he copes with that. Perpetuum doing well in 7th place, but Scuba seems to have recovered slightly from that poor start. He's within DRS range now of Josh, who is just on the back of Perpetuum. And it's all sort of bunched together, as you mentioned, behind Graham at the moment, and it's a bit more spaced out up at the head of the field.
Definitely is. Neymar made a little bit of a mistake coming out of turn 2, so he dropped a few places. I think just lost the car on traction. I don't know if there was any contact or anything like that, but he's got away with no damage by the looks of things, so he can continue on, currently running in 10th place. One thing I will note, Perpetuum obviously running in 7th place at the moment, tucked in behind Graham in the Alpha Tauri, but even with that, as Perpetuum gets really sideways there out of 15, gets away with it, but the Ferrari driver, we've seen this so many times from him this season, as Scuba's now the next one to dive into the pit lane off of those medium tyres. We've seen it so many times this season when Perpetuum's on the medium tyres and still has a massive pace advantage. At this point in time, obviously don't want to speak too early on it, but Perpetuum's not really worked his way through the field as quickly as maybe you would expect.
No, I think he's going to work his way through the field a bit quicker now, though, on the DRS, on the inside for turn 2, and this should be a fairly straightforward move for the Ferrari driver into 6th position. We've just had a message from James, the head commentator here at TTML. It turns out Valkyrie actually spun off the start line, just got way too much wheel spin. We've all done it at various occasions, just got a bit too aggressive on the throttle, and that is why he's now dropped down to the back of the field, and that is why he appeared to be so slow off the start line. I must have just missed that, and Valkyrie actually now gets a penalty for speeding in the pit lane. He's having a bit of a nightmare debut at this moment in time. The soft tyres do look really good at this moment in time. Siege is the fastest man out on circuit at the moment, setting the fastest lap of the race. Perpetuum now picking up a warning. He's really having to push, and I wonder if we'll see him come on this lap. Now that he knows Honey Badger's coming, I imagine he's aware Scuba has come into the pits as well. It's going to be very interesting how this all works out.
Yeah, it's now Josh Fletcher, next person to make a move. He's on debut as well in the racing point. He's going to go past Graham all the way through turn 12 and through to turn 13, but he's really late on the brakes. Just about keeps it out of the Armco barrier on the outside. Graham's trying to come back at him through 14, but just doesn't really have the momentum around the outside of the corner. Josh just about holds on to that 7th place. Do we see Perpetuum come in off of those medium tyres? No, we do not. He's staying out for another lap. So is Tekken, I believe, at the moment in the Alfa Romeo. We're just right on board with him to see if he comes in. No, he doesn't either. So they've gone for something a little bit different, maybe thinking that the softs won't make it to the end of the race if they pit that early. One thing I will say, though, after these opening few laps, Cam, like you said earlier on, he has burnt through his ERS, but the gap at the moment is holding relatively steady to Recon behind. And Recon, since passing Faxand, hasn't dropped him. Faxand's done a very good job at sticking with him. So Recon, while he has maybe a little bit of a pace advantage, it's just not showing at this point.
Yeah, to be honest, I was basing it just off the previous week when he was there for the Hungarian and Belgian Grand Prix. I was expecting him to catch up to Cam a lot quicker than he has done, and for whatever reason, at the moment, he hasn't. Like you said, Faxland's showing some really good pace. He took a win last time around. Yes, it was on penalties, but he kept it clean. Perpetuum didn't. You can't take that away from him at the moment. You've got to say he's still got a chance of a podium at the moment. Imagine it might be a bit difficult, but if he keeps it clean, Recon has a penalty. If he can just stay within DRS range, he's got a really good chance. And if anything, on this lap, Cam's pulling away a bit more. He's got that gap up above 2.5 seconds at the moment.
Definitely has. And Nathan as well in the Renault in 4th place has actually started to close in ever so slightly. He nearly had DRS, I think, that time round off the back of Faxland. So it's starting to actually Constantino up a little bit behind the Haas driver of Recon. So I'm just looking at the sector times. It does look like Recon's got a much faster car in a straight line. So when he does go for it, oh my word, as he nearly puts it in the wall there. And he's diving into the pit lane fairly early off of the soft tyres. Now, that doesn't bode well maybe for the likes of Honey Badger and Scooper, who obviously came in a lot earlier. Nathan's now also in as well, off into a set of medium compound tyres. That is quite an early pit stop for people on the soft compound tyres, especially for the likes of Honey Badger and Scuba, who would have expected maybe these guys to go to maybe lap 8 or 9 in this race.
Yeah, I'm wondering if there's just, for some reason, the track's just really low grip at this moment in time. Some places I see it quite often is at the Hungarian Grand Prix. Quite often I've done commentary and qualifying sessions around there where everyone is struggling on the tyres, and I wonder if people are just not feeling confident in them for whatever reason at the moment. I know Perpetuum was catching up to the back of Maze, so maybe he didn't want to get stuck in the traffic and didn't feel like he had the pace to get ahead, and maybe the others are just going for the undercut. But it's very strange how we've had drivers pit off the mediums on lap 3 and drivers pit off the softs on lap 4 or 5, because that suggests they're going to have to pit again to get to the end of the race, and history tells us that is definitely not necessary around this circuit.
Yeah, that is definitely a bizarre call to see so many people so early. And tell you one thing to look out for here. Honey Badger, look at the gap between him and Recon. Honey Badger's done a brilliant undercut on the Haas driver. 2.5 seconds clear, which was almost exactly the gap between Recon and Cam. So this is going to be incredibly close when Cam comes into the pit lane as to where he is relative to the lead Renault driver. Both Renaults having a great run as it stands. And Honey Badger, getting a little bit squirrely out of turn 10, sorry, but just about gets away with it. But he is now pulling away from Recon, and you would imagine Honey Badger's soft tyres are only 2 laps old and they haven't done qualifying, so they're not going to have a lot of wear on them. He's going to be pulling away from Recon at this point in the race. I think Honey Badger maybe has pulled a masterstroke here.
Yeah, just maybe, and he's all on his own at the moment, and quite often when that happens, with the exception of Singapore last week, he does a fairly good job as well. We've got a few more of the lead cars coming into their pits. That's Cam coming in and out. It'll be very interesting to see where he comes out relative to Honey Badger, because he had about a 2.5 second gap over Recon. So this could be really close on the exit. I think if anything, Honey Badger, in the end, it's not actually going to be that close. Honey Badger's miles ahead of him, and the undercut might have worked fairly well for Recon. He has really closed that gap down, nearly got himself within DRS range. As you can see all the cars moving around here. Faxland and Nathan down towards turn 2 at this moment in time. Nathan's on the outside. He's going to have to go way across the curb, gets a 3-second penalty, and surely he's going to have to give that position back. He's still fighting side by side. Faxland has the inside line for the next corner for turn 3. And yeah, Nathan again going a long way off the circuit. I'm not sure Faxland's going to be too happy about that.
No, I thought if I was in Faxland's shoes, I don't think I'd be too happy about that as well. Nathan went completely off the road at 2 and 4 to hold on to the place. I'm amazed that Nathan's not been given a penalty of some sort for maybe an illegal overtake, because that was blatantly off the circuit, and that was for a battle for P4 in this race. As meanwhile behind, Scuba's coming under pressure from Perpetuum. Scuba undercut Perpetuum in all that pit stop phase. We completely missed it, but Scuba's undercut him, and now Scuba's basically moving out of Perpetuum's way. So Perpetuum up into 7th place. It's not out of the question Perpetuum could still be on the podium here, but again, just like in Singapore, he's got great pace, but the penalties might be the thing that costs him at the end of this race. It's cost him a few times this season where he's missed out on a win by a small margin because of a penalty, and at the moment he might be missing out on a number of places, even to his championship rival Scuba at this point.
Yeah, if I was Scuba, I would do everything in my power to just try and stay within a second, as here comes Perpetuum down the inside at the penultimate corner. He is desperate to work his way through the field. But yeah, as I was saying, if I was Scuba, I'd just try and stay within DRS range of Perpetuum at this moment in time. You know, if you do that, you know you are going to beat him. But already, looks like Perpetuum is doing really well on those fresher, soft tyres. He's 6 seconds behind Honey Badger at the moment, who does have the net lead of this race at this moment in time.
Sorry, that was just...
big shunt.
Oh, Faxland spun the car on his own. He turned in across Scuba at the second corner, and then on the exit of the corner, Faxland lost the car completely on his own. So, my word, Faxland, from a great opportunity of being on the podium, out of this race. What a great first half of the race for him it was, but it's all fallen apart. Scuba's lost places, Scuba's lost time because of that as well, and Perpetuum has passed Nathan at turn 4 as well, so Perpetuum up into 5th place on the road. Nathan gets a penalty, Cam gets a penalty as well, so Perpetuum now with 6 seconds of penalties, which somewhat saved Scuba a little bit after that contact, but that was a bit of a messy couple of corners there for a few drivers, and now all of a sudden we've got a completely different running order.
Yeah, I missed the beginning of that with the Scuba and Faxan, but by the time I got on board with Faxan, it was already halfway sideways, coming out of turn 2, heading into 3, and yeah, just straight lost it into the barrier on the inside of the wall. I'm sure Graham right now is wishing that there were safety cars in this league, because he comes into the pits. Now, he's done 8 laps on the soft tyres, and he qualified on those. That bodes well for all of these that pitted very early on. It especially bodes well for Honey Badger, who's in the net lead of this race at the moment. The closest car to him that doesn't have a penalty is Scuba, about 8 seconds behind. If the Renault driver keeps it clean, he's looking very good to get his first victory of the season here.
Yeah, I don't want to jinx Honey Badger just yet, because I know that if I do jinx him, he is going to be angrily messaging me after this race. But now that he's seemingly broken his Wednesday curse, all of a sudden, it's working out beautifully for him. He's at the front of the field on a little bit of an alternate strategy, but he's got the gap to Cam. Cam's not closing in, neither is Recon. Perpetuum's probably going to be the closest person to him maybe at the end of this race on pure pace alone, but Perpetuum has 6 seconds of penalty, so that basically takes him completely out of contention for the win, unless anything crazy goes down towards the end of this race. So all of a sudden, now that he's broken his curse, Honey Badger's absolutely flying, and it's just a shame that he didn't break his curse at the very first evening of the season.
Yeah, and a bit like you said, I'm a bit careful to call any predictions at this moment in time, because he looked very good last week and we thought he'd broke the curse, and then Singapore happened. Valkyrie is having an absolute nightmare at the moment. I think he's got big front wing damage and he's just trying to hang on, just trying to avoid coming into the pits. Once more, Perpetuum is showing some really good pace, as we would expect on those soft tyres, so don't be surprised if he gets up to the back of Honey Badger. It's going to be a challenge for him to get up to the back and pass his way further up, and yeah, indeed, Scuba there just getting ahead of Nathan using that DRS, and Valkyrie does pull into the pits and retire from the session, so we're down to 14 runners at this moment in time. Scuba's just got to try and keep it clean, keep his head down. He's still looking very good to get a podium here, and if he stays within 6 seconds, as things stand, that will be enough to extend his championship lead. Yeah, definitely. Just like you say, got to keep within that penalty range of Perpetuum, as Perpetuum is already going for a move on Recon all the way through turn 1. He was so much better on traction coming out of 18. He's going to have the straight line speed maybe down towards the second corner. We've already said that Recon's got a great car in a straight line. Recon tries to keep it down the inside, and in the process picks up his second penalty of the race. So at the moment, that all but secures Scuba on the podium. So if Scuba can just keep the pace up and maybe keep within pace of Recon, he could be on the podium here. Perpetuum up into 3rd place on the road. Cam is his next target, but again, those penalties taking him out of contention. I'll tell you what though, for Recon, 4th is still a good result for Recon at the moment. Will it be 5th when he crosses the line? But even so, Recon may be just not as comfortable around Russia as he has been at some of the tracks he's raced at. No, definitely. He didn't have a good qualifying. Unfortunately, we didn't see his lap. He had an absolutely fantastic start, but yeah, ever since he got ahead of Faxland, which didn't take him too long, he just didn't seem to have that pace to catch up to Cam, and he's still about 2.5 seconds behind at the moment, and that's pretty much been the gap since just before the pit stops, if we're being perfectly honest. Someone else who's not having a bad race at the moment, and someone else who's kept it clean, is Siege in 7th place, as Silas has now retired from the session. Looking at that, he's had a big moment on the way out of turn 3, so Siege doing okay in 7th. We'll see if his softs can last, as he was the first one to pit. There's a pretty good battle behind him involving his teammate and Josh Fletcher as well for 8th and 9th. Yeah, Fletcher on his debut at the moment, trying to get up into 8th place. He does have a penalty over his name, so that is going to cost him in this battle with Mays. He's far enough at the moment ahead of Graham that it won't cost him too much, but Graham is on a fresh set of medium tyres, so you would imagine that Graham should be able to close in. Graham maybe kicking the fact that there's more people here tonight. If this was any other normal night, Graham would probably be running up in about 5th or 6th place. Currently running obviously 3rd in the standings, but at the moment just doesn't seem to have the pace of the drivers in front of him, and he's got Tekken on the softs all over his rear wing at this point in the race as well. Nathan as well is another one that's had a good race so far in the Renault. He is just clear at the moment of Siege and able to hold on to that 6th place. As Cam again now, he's the next person to pick up another penalty. So I don't know, I just have a double check of the gap. We'll have a look at the full gap between all of the drivers. I think, yeah, at this point in time, Scuba is half a second within penalty range of Cam, so Scuba could still come out of this race with the 2nd place finish. Yeah, and importantly, Cam, Perpetuum, Recon, Nathan, they all have 6 seconds of penalties at the moment, so they're all racing each other. It means Siege, he's got a chance of a top 5 finish, you've got to say, at least at this moment. And there's still a few laps to go. The tyres are going to get slightly more worn. There is still a chance we're going to see a couple of these drivers pick up the other odd penalty, and then that could really make a difference with how close they all are at the moment. Perpetuum is really closing, though, onto the back of Cam at this moment in time. He was within DRS range down the back straight. Surely he's going to be going for a move down into turn 2 next time around. Cam again low on his ERS, using a bit to boost him. They're coming onto the penultimate corner. Not sure that was really necessary. I'd have rather saved it for this main straight, although it might be in vain no matter what he does, because Perpetuum's got a lot more ERS. He's got the DRS, and I think he'll soon have second position.
Yeah, and I think it would just be smart, really, for Cam not to fight this one too hard as Cam moves to the inside line, actually towards turn 2. Perpetuum in that Ferrari looks like he's just going to breeze around the outside, and he does. And Perpetuum used no ERS in the process of that. I think he recognised that Cam didn't have any ERS himself, so rather than not really wasting his, he's just used about 10% in that whole section of the circuit. So that's actually worked out quite beautifully for Perpetuum. Up into second place now. Obviously not going to be able to challenge for the race victory because of his penalties, but should be able at this point to secure a third place finish if Scuba sticks within his penalty range. Recon's just picked up his third penalty of the race now, so that is going to drop him behind Nathan and maybe Siege as well. So Recon really not going well around this circuit. He's not loving the track limits. He's not been on the best strategy either today, and he's just not looked that comfortable. He's also another one that's burnt through his ERS and hasn't been able to recover. And as I say that about Nathan maybe being within penalty range, Nathan picks up another penalty, so that takes him out of penalty range and puts Siege and Maze, I think, just within penalty range of him. So a lot of penalty things to look out for before the end of the race. And this race is nearly over, and Honey Badger has looked, well, he didn't look in command at the start of the race. He was running down in 4th place, pitted early, and since then it's worked out beautifully for the Renault driver.
Yeah, we haven't really spoken about him too much, just because he's been clear ever since that early pit stop. We had a fantastic qualifying, the lead car on the medium tyres, and we've seen that a few times this season. That is the strategy to go on. I said beforehand it might not work tonight, but he had the pace to get into the top 10, mainly because we saw so many drivers obviously invalidating their qualifying lap. He's 1.5 seconds, well 1.2 seconds, ahead of Perpetuum at the moment. Importantly for Perpetuum, he's more than 6 seconds ahead of Scuba. If the race had finished on that last lap, Perpetuum would have got second position, finishing just ahead of Scuba. And I'm guessing as well, judging by the pace he's had, no, Scuba actually has the fastest lap by 15 thousandths of a second. And with how close these two are, that extra bonus point could be oh so important. Cam, unfortunately for him, it's another race where he's qualified on pole, but he wouldn't have got the win anyway. But those penalties are going to knock him off the podium, which is a shame.
It definitely is a shame for Cam, and I think he'll be gutted at that as well. Obviously recently announced that he'll be stopping league racing in a couple of months' time. He's been looking to try and break that duck, and unfortunately it's just not going to happen for him in this first race. Maybe he can come back and win the second race like we've seen him do a few times this season already. Honey Badger then, Perpetuum is absolutely flying as per usual. He's within DRS range of Honey Badger. I wonder if he's actually going to try and go for a move here on Honey Badger into 13. I don't think it's going to be close enough to do it, so I think it's just going to be smart for Perpetuum to sit in second place and just cross the line. As I say that though, look how easily he closed in on Honey Badger under the brakes. Perpetuum on these softs looking much faster than he was on the mediums. He actually might have a look here into 15, but he doesn't go for it. I think it would be wise for Perpetuum not to go for it, not to battle too hard, because it could cost him out to Scuba behind him on the track. Honey Badger has done beautifully. Actually, Perpetuum is going to go for it at the very penultimate corner of the circuit, makes side-by-side contact with Honey Badger. That was a little bit, that just didn't seem to be worth it for me, as Honey Badger crosses the line and does finally pick up the first win of the season for him. Perpetuum spins across the line in second. Where is Scuba? He misses out by 6 tenths of a second. Perpetuum just about holds on to that second place. It was risky at the end to go for the move. He just about held on to it. Scuba third, Cam gets fourth, Siege jumps up to 5th ahead of Recon, Maze gets 7th ahead of Nathan, Graham 9th, Tekken 10th, Takeeper jumps ahead of Josh, who drops down into 11th place, and I believe the last person across the line was Neymar. My word, a bit of a crazy race, and Perpetuum nearly through second place nearly through second place away at the end of that race. Just about got away with it, but a bit of an adventurous end to the race for him.
Yeah, I can see why he went for it. If that was a battle for second position, I don't think he'd have gone for it, but he just wanted that psychological advantage of knowing I would have won this race if I hadn't got penalties. In the end, though, Honey Badger, who did defend the move, it would have been very easy for Honey Badger just to say, you know what, off you go. But I think he wanted the same thing. He wanted to get that victory. He takes his first win of the season. Perpetuum closes up ever so slightly to Scuba in the championship. I think with Scuba getting the fastest lap, that does limit the damage ever so slightly, but the gap is now down to 8 points, I believe. We'll see how this goes in Japan, because we've got Mashiro, who's joining us for Japan as well. He's another very quick driver.
Yeah, and I believe he's picked up a win as well this season, has Mashiro. He could be another one, like you said, that could be right at the front. That would be great for Mashiro as well, and I believe, obviously, Japan, his home race, so I imagine that he'll be wanting to go for pride for that one as well. But it is Honey Badger then that finally gets his first win of the season at round 17 of the season. Great stuff from him. Finally has broken that Wednesday curse. Perpetuum and Scuba on the podium, then it's Cam, Siege, Recon, Maze, Nathan, Graham, Tekken to Keeper, Josh and Neymar are your finishers. Silas, Raukio and Faxander the drivers that retired from that race. Silas running at the back, having a crash at 3. Raukio retiring in the pit lane after a fairly adventurous race for him, and Faxander spinning out of 2 and into the wall after contact with Scuba. So a bit of a chaotic race from start to finish, and unlike in real life, a good race around Russia.
Yeah, I mean, we sort of turned to chaos nearly on lap 1 with all sorts of Recon, Honey Badger, Maze, and I think there was someone else involved in that as well who I couldn't quite see going 4 wide. It somehow managed to all turn out okay for them. I think there's a few drivers who'll be feeling that could have gone better. Faxland obviously retiring from a not too bad a position. A lot of drivers picking up penalties. It's easy to do that at Russia because you can get away with running off track. There's not many places at Suzuka where you can run off track and get away with it so easily. 130R perhaps. Everywhere else, you're probably going to find a bit of grass and a bit of gravel and very possibly the barrier straight afterwards.
Yeah, definitely. This is, like you say, completely opposite really of Sochi. This track does bite you if you get it wrong. And I think if anyone's seen my Twitter page recently, you'll know that I made a pretty catastrophic mistake at this circuit a couple of days ago in an ACC race. And it was a little bit embarrassing, funny to watch back, but it just proves that Suzuka, it does bite you if you get it wrong. There's a lot of places to go off. And because this track is such a driver's circuit, it really focuses on who's the most confident around this track. If you're not necessarily feeling that confident in your setup or in yourself, it's really going to show around this track.
Yeah, you need full confidence. So many great corners. The S's, probably in modern Formula 1 cars, some of the most challenging corners because 130R at this track, at other tracks, like for example at Spa, we've got Eau Rouge, has sort of lost that element, whereas the S's, you've still got to be absolutely precise. Degners, you get that wrong, you're heading into the gravel, you're heading towards the barrier. Spoon, we saw Sebastian Vettel during his end of season spins in 2018 make contact with Max Verstappen there. That's another corner where it's very easy to run wide ever so slightly and there's not a lot of grip out there. It's not easy to overtake either whatsoever around this track. One DRS zone heading down towards the first corner, and because it's not really a braking zone, a big braking zone into turn 1, I should say, that makes it even more difficult to overtake. So qualifying, oh so important once again.
It really is. You've got to get you've got to nail qualifying. It's more important here than it has been at most circuits this season. It's probably maybe on a par to the likes of Hungary. Maybe Hungary obviously a little bit more difficult to overtake because of how short the straights are. The straights of the circuit a little bit longer, but like you say, the braking zones at the end of the straights are little to none. Obviously we have the 130R, which is a completely flat corner in modern Formula 1 cars, and turn 1 is almost flat. You're braking kind of midway through turn 1 into turn 2, so it is difficult to make those overtakes stick, like you say. Another thing to look out for as well is pit lane speeding penalties around the circuit. I think every time I've commentated around Suzuka, a lot of people do pick up speeding penalties into the pit lane because it is a downhill braking zone into the pit lane. So easy to get caught out by that, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. It's very tricky pit lane exit. It changed ever so slightly in modern times. Well, yeah, we'll have to see how the drivers cope with this as they head towards qualifying.
Yeah, we're on board there with Faxand once again. He's going to be running us through a lap around Suzuka. So he heads into turn 1, takes a bit of a wide line through turn 1, runs over the curb and runs very wide through 2. Misses the apex by quite a way, so that's going to cost him massively as he heads up through the S section. Might ruin his momentum a little bit as the keeper is already out of the session, so that maybe indicates he might have had a spin or an invalidation at the first couple of corners. Now through Dunlop at the end of the S is so easy to hit the curb on the inside and spin the car, but Faxand gets it through the corner nicely. Silas has also retired from the session through the first. Degner takes a lot of curb on the inside as Faxand gets away with it through the second part as well. Nice and neat. Cam has now retired from the session. He might have invalidated through the Degeners, now into the hairpin, then a little bit cambered this hairpin, so you can take a bit more speed than maybe you would first think. Faxan kept it in third gear through that corner, through 200R, this one an easily flat corner, as we head up towards Spoon then. Spoon the next corner, it's a double apex, then 13 and 14, a little bit faster in the first part, slow down for the second part of the corner, make sure you get a good exit out of this corner is absolutely crucial. And Fatsan gets it nice and neat out of the corner, running down the left-hand side of the track, running up towards 130R, like I mentioned, easily flat in modern Formula 1 cars. A little bit reprofiled from previous years, so it's not as sharp as it was maybe in the early 2000s. Now we head into the Casio Triangle, the last two corners on the track. It's turn 16, 17 and 18, the downhill corner. No bump on this game, so it's much easier on traction out of the corner. Short run to the line, and it's Perpetuum this time round that gets pole position over Scuba. But look at that, how close is that? We had a 1 second gap in the first qualifying of the night. This time round, it's barely 0.02 of a second. That is a brilliant qualifying. Perpetuum gets pole over Scuba. Mishiro in third place, Fatsan fourth, and most notably as well, Recon retiring from the session with an invalidation.
Yeah, I feel like I should apologise to Honey Badger and Recon. As I was flipping through the different cars there, I managed to catch Honey Badger losing it through Dunlop and Recon losing it through Spoon. So I feel like I've managed to commentate as curse them without even saying anything, just by flicking through the cars. But we saw how many drivers there either invalidated or made mistakes on their laps. There's quite a few drivers setting times in the 1 minute 40s there, that being Josh and Honey Badger. I know Raukio, I think, made a mistake as well. Recon, I saw make a mistake. This is a very tricky circuit indeed. Perpetuum just on pole position from Scuba. Mashiro in third place. And there's a bit of a gap to those further back. Siege, Tekken and Honey Badger going for the alternate strategy. Honey Badger will at least get a fresh set of tyres, because I imagine those mediums more like 50p pieces after the spin he had early on in the lap.
Yeah, definitely. He'll be probably a little bit glad that he's not starting as either top 10 with a spin like that. He's lucky to get away with not invalidating as well, so he does gain a few places from that at least as well, in 12th place. Josh, obviously, another one that made a mistake, in 11th place. So that is your qualifying order for you then. And we've got to look out for Siege in this one once again. He's the lead driver on the alternate strategy. And around Japan, for a track with a lot of high-speed corners in quick succession, this is another track, really, where tyre wear isn't too much of a worry for the drivers. Those starting on the mediums, while it might not be as maybe a shocking as it was at Russia where they're pitting at the end of the first lap, you may see people on the mediums possibly pit before those on the softs.
Yeah, unsurprisingly, I think Pirelli actually take their hardest tyres to this circuit, just because it is so heavy on tyre wear as you're driving through the S's. It is quite tricky as well. There's all the arguments that go on about, oh, this track's pad OP, this track's wheel OP. This is definitely a circuit that suits those who use the wheel. I'm not 100% sure who does, but that is something to watch out for, as you can be a bit more precise through the S's. You can just manage your tyre temperatures ever so slightly better. We've got two title rivals on the front row at Japan. That has never gone wrong in history before. This could be a really good race.
It definitely could, yeah. I can't think of anything in Formula 1 history that suggests that two drivers starting on the front row of the grid at Suzuka would result in any sort of contact. I can't think of that at all, especially when one of them's in a Ferrari. But anyway, Perpetuum obviously maybe a little bit disappointed last time out not to win, obviously, in Russia. He had great pace, as per usual, as he's had so many times this season. But again, penalties is what cost him. This time round, I can't remember the last time Perpetuum actually started on pole position and really disappeared at the front of the field. It's usually we see Perpetuum coming through the field having started on the mediums or invalidated in qualifying. It's never usually actually started at the front, as he actually spins there through Dunlop. Just goes to show how easy it is to spin on the inside curb. He does it without even needing to go at full speed. So got to keep an eye out for Perpetuum here. This is the first opportunity for him in a while where he doesn't have to work his way through the field.
Yeah, quite a few drivers having a messy formation lap as well. Cameron Recon got disqualified, I think, basically off the grid, so I don't know whether one of them hadn't set off and Recon perhaps has just gone straight into the back of Cam. Siege and Graham have been disqualified. We see Perpetuum have a spin. Like you said, it's very easy to spin it around this circuit, and that definitely will have woken up Perpetuum ever so slightly. It means that those further up are going to have a bit of a wait as well, because Scuba's not exactly slowing the pack down at the moment. I'm so looking forward to this track. I always enjoy the Japanese Grand Prix. I remember the days when it was like the last Grand Prix of the season, well, it's always one of the last, but when it was pretty much always some big title race, and it could well be tonight. 4 races to go after today. 6 points between them now, Perpetuum and Scuba. After the 2 points Perpetuum got in qualifying, Scuba could really do with taking the victory here, or at least beating the Ferrari driver.
Definitely, yeah, it is possible after this race we could head into the next round of the season with both of our championship protagonists on the same amount of points. That would be great to see if that does happen, but Perpetuum's going to have to try and win this race, and Scuba's going to have to try and get in front of him. So far, on pace alone, you've got to say that Scuba maybe a little bit of a disadvantage.
Yeah, definitely, but only 17 thousandths in qualifying, but Perpetuum, if anything, just seems to be a different animal in the race to what he is in qualifying. I'm just looking. So far this season, he's had 2 pole positions. Both times he's done pole win, fastest lap. So it doesn't bode too well for Scuba, but maybe, just maybe, if he can get ahead on the run down towards turn 1, on that inside line, he could have a slight chance. The lights are coming on here now at Suzuka. We've got 5 lights. They go out, and we are underway. What are the starts like? It's not a bad start, to be honest, from Scuba. He's going to be alongside. He's going to be ahead before turn 1. We've got a Renault already in the wall. I believe that is Nathan, but Scuba with an absolutely fantastic start on the inside line. Takes the lead of the race. Mashiro right on the back of Perpetuum as well, but the Ferrari driver will just manage to stay ahead. Further down the field, you've got Josh and Graham nearly side by side there. I think Nathan's last session. Oh, got a Ferrari, a McLaren round, sorry. I'm not quite sure who that was. I think it was the keeper again, having a bit of trouble early on in the race. Scuba's just flying away at this moment in time on those soft tyres. Siege has done a pretty good job on those mediums as well, staying in contact with all those ahead. Honey Badger and Recon were battling. Silas and Tekken going side by side through the deck. There's always very brave to do that on anyone, especially on your teammate. Scuba's just flying up. I don't know what else to say. Scuba's had an absolutely fantastic start to this race, hooked everything up off the line, and has really pulled away through Perpetuum, who must be a bit shell-shocked about the start that the Red Bull driver has. Josh now moves his way up ahead of Siege, so that is the racing point up into 6th place, using the extra grip he's got on the soft tyres at this moment in time. Likewise, Rico and Valkio, who must have had an absolutely fantastic start from the back of the grid, although he's starting to come under a bit more pressure now with Honey Badger trying to close up through 130R. We're not going to see a Renault going around the outside a la Alonso on Schumacher in 2005. In fact, Valkio here just thinking about a move on Recon. That was very late on the brakes. Both of them going straight across the chicane there, and Valkio deciding to come into the pits, as does Siege. Once again, getting rid of those mediums extremely early on for a set of soft tyres. He was probably the only one who ran out of tyres last time around. It's interesting that he's going for the same tactic once again.
Definitely interesting. I wonder if he's just trying to get out of the queue of cars. It is so easy to get held up around this track, so putting himself in some free air could really work for him. Silas is struggling with a lot of front wing damage. He's about to get overtaken, I believe, by his teammate Tekken, who was just behind him on the road. What a crazy start that was, all the way through the field. I'll tell you one person who's had an absolutely insane start, and that is Josh. He's gained 5 places off the start as someone has spun one of the Mercedes. I think that might be Maze. It is Maze. Maze was off the road on the grass coming out of, well, off the line basically. It was just basically got forced off the road and onto the grass. Very Vitaly Petrovesque in 2010, just off the road almost completely at the start of the race. We also had Nathan spin into the wall. I think Nathan spun into the wall reacting to a poor start from one of the Alpha Tauris. I think he just got caught in behind, even with his teammate as well. As Graham and Recon now go side by side through Stowe, and Honey Badger trying to get on this as well. Honey Badger trying to follow him through, and Cam spins directly in front of them, so Cam spins out of contention in his McLaren. My word, people are really struggling for grip around this track. People are spinning off left, right and centre. Cam, another big person to spin himself out of contention. Recon's up into 7th place. He's got Honey Badger directly behind him as well, and Honey Badger now the lead person on the alternate strategy on the medium tyres. Obviously got to keep an eye out for Siege. Perpetuum sets the fastest lap of the race, so it looks like he's trying to get back into his rhythm, but like you said, what an opening lap from Scuba. Like you said at the start of this race, that Perpetuum has had races where he starts on pole, wins the race and sets the fastest lap. Scuba needed to get in amongst that to try and break that trend, and he's done a beautiful job of it so far.
Yeah, an absolutely fantastic job. He's just going to have to watch out for the undercut, I think, ever so slightly, and might be hoping that Mashiro could do him a favour at the moment. Mashiro's sticking with his guys, and to be honest, Faxan's not too far behind either. He'll be hoping for a good result after the last race. Maze in the pits, medium tyres on, and that'll be a new front wing as well. But yeah, we've seen the drivers are just loving this. I think they're getting towards the end of the season. They know they can just have a bit of fun now around this circuit, but hopefully we don't see too many more broken front wings at this moment in time. Although Perpetuum did set the fastest lap, he was only about a tenth faster than Scuba, which was nowhere near the difference we were seeing last time around. And Scuba's keeping that gap at just above 1 second, which could be really crucial at the moment. Whether this is just a track Scuba really enjoys, we're seeing a good performance from him here. Mashiro's definitely putting Perpetuum under more pressure than the Ferrari's putting Scuba under pressure at this moment in time. But of course, things could change with strategy and what's going on later on in the race. But this could be really interesting indeed. We've not really seen this. We've not really seen these two go together. I think it's only the 5th race this season we've seen it in the 3rd event where they've been fighting out on track. We could get a really good battle between them on that moment. Again, Perpetuum faster that lap, but by less than a tenth of a second.
Yeah, it's really close. Perpetuum, again, seems to have a fast car in a straight line. He gained a lot of time. He did use a bit of ERS, but he gained quite a bit of time down towards 130R. I was thinking maybe Scuba's burnt through his ERS trying to pull away, but he's not exactly burnt through his ERS as much as some other people have on the field. Faxand has absolutely no ERS to his name, and neither does Josh as they try to work their way forwards. Recon's now trying to close in on the back of them as well, and he's dragging Neymar with him. He's just passed Neymar recently, but Neymar sticking with the back of the Haas car. All right for the time being. Honey Badger as well, trying to close in on the back of him, pushes the track limits heavily at the exit of Dunlop, just about gets away with it, but he on the medium tyres is trying to work his way through. Interestingly, everyone that started on the medium tyres apart from Siege is still out on the medium tyres, so Siege really bucking the trend, coming in very early as Neymar, I think, had a look towards the braking for the inside of the corner. I think Honey Badger maybe thought that Neymar was going to defend the line, so braked really late to maybe go for the outside line and just ran clean into the back of the AlphaTauri.
Yeah, a bit unfortunate, I think. All that, I don't think Neymar would have been expecting Honey Badger to go for the move. Maybe now. Well, around this circuit, it's quite a high downforce circuit. Surely we're going to have to see Honey Badger get rid of those medium tyres and maybe go for the softs, because he should be fine now getting them towards the end of this race. But that front wing change is definitely going to ruin his alternate strategy and put him out behind Siege at this moment, whereas the others that went for the alternate strategy, Tekken's down in 12th, Siege went for the pits, and Cam is way down in 11th. But this is very interesting. Scuba into the pits at the end of lap 4.
Wow, that's very early on. As also, I believe, yeah, that's Josh that's come in as well. Honey Badger, as you would expect, is in. Josh is the first person to pick up that speeding penalty in the pit lane that is so easy to do around here. But yeah, Scuba in very early for a set of medium tyres. And we saw those people come in for a set of medium tyres early on. It didn't work out for them in Russia. I wonder if it's going to be the same here. Scuba, good for him. He's in a lot of clean air. The first car ahead of him on the road will be Tekken, who was on the medium tyres. You would imagine to be pitting fairly soon. So Scuba won't really catch Tekken before he's due into the pit lane. Scuba's really going to have to push on these medium tyres though, because if the soft tyres are still performing well, great opportunity for Perpetuum and maybe even Mashiro to perform the overcut.
Yeah, it's not something you see too often in 50% races, but it's something we've seen quite often this season. These soft tyres do last an incredibly long time, and the overcut could well be possible here for Perpetuum and Mashiro. Maybe we'll see one or both of them coming on this lap. I imagine Mashiro will just do the opposite of whatever Perpetuum does, who just gets it a bit wide on the second start part of Spoon, loses the rear end ever so slightly, so not an ideal exit up towards 130R, but Mashiro nowhere near close enough at this moment in time. And Scuba, you're right, he's definitely got to be hoping that he's not gone too early, because he was really looking good pace-wise to take the victory in this race. But judging by the fact that Siege pitted on lap 1 and that Honey Badger was quite happy to put the soft tyres on at the end of lap 4, you've got to wonder, as in fact Perpetuum and Mashiro are both coming into the pits, and Faxland as well. So it's Recon now, still setting fastest laps of the race, so the tyres are clearly in a good condition.
Yeah, they definitely are. So they're into the pit lane. Perpetuum held a little bit there in the pit lane by the Williams of Faxland. I wonder whether we're going to see... I wonder if we're going to see Mashiro fall foul at the same fate. We are. Mashiro's dropped a bit of time in the pit lane as well. So they've all pitted kind of on the same lap. Where is Scuba relative to them? Perpetuum out of the pit lane. Scuba back into the net lead of this race. And he has actually gained a bit of time. So the time has gone up to about 1.5 seconds. So gained probably about half a second or so on that outlap on Perpetuum, but Perpetuum was slightly held in the pit lane, so it doesn't really seem like the undercut was all that powerful. Perpetuum comes out clearly in a net P2 in this race. Mashiro still in a net P3, but crucially for Mashiro, he's dropped out of DRS range to the Ferrari, so now Mashiro is going to really have to push if he wants to get back into this battle for the lead.
Yes, and thinking about it, to be honest, Recon probably did want to pit that lap, but obviously Mashiro was his teammate, and you don't want to do a double stack on this game. But Recon has picked up a 3-second penalty, and it turns out he was actually driving on a default setup in the Russia race, which may have explained why he was struggling a lot more than what we usually see from Recon, well, definitely from the two races that we saw earlier on this season. There's a good battle going further on down the field. The keeper just ahead of Raukio, who's got Graham and Honeybadger trying to close up at the moment. All of these have been into the pitch as, there's been a spinner further down the field, and that is Silas off at Dunlop.
Yeah, another person off a Dunlop. I think he's got away with no damage by the looks of things, but just another person maybe clipping that inside curb. So easy to do. And as you can see, overheating tyres. Massive snap of oversteer in the first part of Degner, and it just loses the car, goes through the gravel. So easy to do. If you just overheat the tyres, you can just snap and lose the rear of the car. And we're just going to go back on board with that battle. Look at this, down to 130. Oh, my word. Honeybadger, big contact, and Honeybadger, a massive accident for the Renault man. Trying to get them moved on Raukio, and Graham runs just into the back of the Red Bull man. Spears off to the side and just into the wall. Very, very Element Nish style in the Toyota. Honeybadger, we just said how he'd broken that Wednesday curse by winning the first race of the evening, and now he's in the barrier. What a shame for the Renault man. Looked like he could have been on for a good strategy, but ever since that damage off the back of Neymar's car, it's fallen apart for him. Raukio and Graham, by the looks of things, get away with it relatively unscathed. They hold 10th and 11th, but Honeybadger, what a shame for him, just kind of in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Yeah, I think 3 cars that closely together, unfortunately for him, was never going to work out. I was on board with Honeybadger at the time. It looked like might have been a slight tap, like you said, from Graham onto Raukio. There was a slight tap, I think, with Honeybadger and Graham, and maybe also Honeybadger just losing it a bit in the dirty air, which is very easily done on this game. And it's just a shame that it had to end like that, because that was looking like a pretty good battle, and who knows what Honeybadger would have been able to do building his way up the field. Siege is in 7th after that early pit stop for the set of the soft tyres, so we'll watch out how he does. And looking at the gap up the field, Perpetuum is closing up to Scuba just ever so slightly. He's nearly got that gap within 1 second at the moment as Recon finally comes into the pit. So it'll be interesting to see where he comes out in all of this relative to, I'd imagine he'll come out behind Mashiro, but maybe just ahead of Josh will be his target.
Yeah, that probably is going to be his target for this race, and he has the freshest set of medium tyres as Perpetuum. Now sets the fastest lap of the race as he chases down Scuba, his championship rival. There goes Bashiro past the screen, and there is Josh and Faxand. Recon's going to be behind Josh, I think, into turn 1, just behind Josh's. Raukio is now out of the session as well. Another person, he's spun coming out of the Casio triangle, and it's gone into the wall on the outside of the last corner. They're so easily done, especially if you lose the rear of the car. You can just get sucked onto the grass and into the gravel, and that's basically your race over with. And Raukio was having such a good run, a better run than he was having at Russia, and it's just fallen apart for him at the exit of turn 18. That's such a shame, and unfortunately for Recon, this is a little bit of a problem for him. He's come out just behind Josh, and the first overtaking opportunity he'll have is into the hairpin. If you can't get that done, it's going to be maybe a move into 130R. Yes, and obviously having a penalty, he'd have been hoping to come out behind Mashiro and maybe close up to these guys. He just leaves the door open into the hairpin, and Recon thinks, why not? It's worth a go. Not able to get it done, but he's got a really good exit out of that hairpin here. Josh is running out of ERS. He's going to try round the outside of Spoon. This is going to be very brave from the Haas driver if he can go all the way round the outside. And Josh there, just showing him the exit of the track. And Josh is around. Recon's nearly gone into the back of him. And that's going to give Faxland a fantastic exit up the hill. Yeah, it's going to try and get a run on Recon down towards 130R, but Fatsan doesn't have any ERS in his attack of the Haas driver. He's still closing in, though, in that slipstream of the Haas. Can he go for a move maybe into turn 16? He's going to look to the outside, but Recon slams the door on him. Recon saying, you're not going to get that 4th place off of me. Fatsand has to stay in 5th for the time being. But yeah, Josh just getting caught on the inside curb at the second part of Spoon. So easily done. So many corners where you do that and you just spin the car, and Josh trying so hard to defend, just spun the car all on his own. Recon lucky to get away with not really getting any damage off the back of him, not really making any contact. So Recon now 4th, Fatsan 5th, Siege running in 6th to keep it directly behind him. And I tell you what, for Siege, pitting early for the soft tyres hasn't really worked. He was running in around 6th or net 6th or 7th place already. He now runs in 6th place after Josh's spin, and the keeper's closed in on him fairly quickly. So for Siege, the early pit stop I don't think has worked. Yeah, I think just slightly too aggressive, which might have been a bit of a shame for him. And you'd imagine in the final couple of laps of this race, he's going to be under some real pressure from the keeper at this moment in time. Josh did manage to recover from that spin without any damage. He's now in 9th place, but with Graham not too far behind him, so I'm sure Graham will again be hoping to keep it clean and just about stay within contact at this moment in time. Over the front of the field, though, Perpetuum's really starting to turn the screw and put the pressure on Scuba at this moment in time. He's got a lot more VRS than the Red Bull driver. He's got that gap down to within half a second and might just be close enough for the first time to have a go into the first corner. You do feel like maybe Perpetuum is just lagging back a little bit, waiting for the perfect opportunity so that he can use that ERS advantage he has. He really closed in on the brakes there through 16. Didn't get the best run, though, out of turn 17 and through 18. And I think Perpetuum's realised that maybe this isn't the opportunity into turn 1. So he's just going to sit back and wait. I think that's what he's doing, is waiting for the window. And then he's going to use that ERS advantage that he has. Recon sets the fastest lap of the race as he tries to chase down his Haas teammate Mashiro for that final spot on the podium. But again, Recon has a time penalty, which is going to cost him in this race to his teammate for the time being, and maybe Faxand as well if he can keep within range. Siege, meanwhile, has been overtaken by Takeeper now, so Takeeper up into 6th place, Siege down into 7th. Takeeper didn't have a good run really last time out in Russia, looking to recover from that with a better run here and maybe try and close in on the back of Faxand for 5th place if he can. Takeeper's had a good second half really off this season. He's shown good pace at many points this season, but maybe just poor qualifying at points in the season just really have played dividends really for them, haven't they?
Yeah, quite often if you get caught in the midfield, we see it often, the Constantina effect. You end up getting involved in some incidents. It was a good lap for the McLaren drivers as well, with Cam getting ahead of Graham. I think Graham must have made a small mistake somewhere because he was a lot closer to Josh last time around. Be interested to see if Siege can just maybe hang on to the back of the keeper at the moment. I think that's what he's got to hope for to have any chance. Otherwise, he might start dropping into the clutches of Neymar, Josh and Cam. But the fact that Siege has kept it clean will put him in a good situation. I'm just checking the penalties at the moment. It's 8 seconds for Cam, 5 for Neymar and Josh, and only 3 seconds for Recon. So the pace Recon is showing, he should at least keep 4th position.
Yeah, at the moment that's going to save him for the time being, but like we say, if he closes on Mashiro, he is at a disadvantage to his teammate. Meanwhile, Perpetuum, is he close enough this time around? He's in the DRS, he's in the slipstream, he's having a look towards turn 1. Scuba's going to park it in the middle of the road, and Perpetuum runs just clean out of road on the exit of turn 1 and through turn 2, and that is so easy to do. The good thing for Scuba here is that defending into turn 1, if Perpetuum isn't already passed into turn 1, defending into turn 1's fairly easy because you can just stick it on the inside, and going for a move around the outside of 1 and 2 is incredibly difficult to pull off, as Perpetuum proved there. You just kind of understeer really off the circuit.
Yeah, it's one of the few tracks where you can just sort of commit that early to the inside line, and because of the nature of the braking zone, to do it all the way around the outside on brakes, we've seen for Perpetuum, you can hit the curb. And quite often as well, when you see drivers hit that curb, it sends them so far wide and they lose quite a lot of time. So if anything, Perpetuum did a good job just to limit it to that amount of time. Mashiro's not really had the pace to close back up. You do get a feeling getting held under the pits by the Williams of Faxand, perhaps just costing him ever so slightly because he was right on the back of Perpetuum. But you still don't know. Maybe if Scuba and Perpetuum just start battling a bit more, we might see a bit more between them. Further down the field, Tekken just closing up to Graham ever so slightly for 11th and 12th place at the moment. And Cam now trying to get into the back of Josh, trying to use the best of those soft tyres while he still has the advantage.
Yeah, definitely. The one problem for Cam here is Josh is now within DRS range of Neymar in front, so they both close in on the Alpha Tower. It's going to be difficult for Cam to overtake, especially with 0% ERS in that car. Meanwhile, battle for the lead once again. Perpetuum this time round I think is going for the move. He's going to look to the outside line. He's ahead of Scuba into the braking zone for the corner. Scuba, oh, there's contact between the pair of them. I think Scuba's going to let Perpetuum go in all of that because he made contact with the side of the Ferrari, but in the process Perpetuum picks up a time penalty. Now that is very, very crucial for this race. Perpetuum now is going to lose out to both Scuba and Mashiro if it stays like this.
Yeah, he's going to let Perpetuum go, so that's taking a bit of guilt. Do you let Perpetuum go and then give him a 3-second gap? Because surely by letting him go, Scuba, you're then suggesting that you've caused a penalty, as well as Josh is out of the race. He's gone off on the first part of the S's, really. That must have been a big moment.
He made contact with the side of Cam. Cam was going down the inside at turns 1 and 2. Josh was trying to keep it down the inside for the start of 3, and Cam had to turn into the corner, and Josh just didn't want to back out of it, and they made contact, and Josh spun the car and put it in the barrier. So Josh now out of the race. What was looking like a good race for him fell apart in the second half, really, unfortunately. Cam gets away with no damage, but there's a lot of dirt on that McLaren. You can tell that Cam's kind of been in the wars in this race. As my word, Neymar spins directly in front of him as well now. So Neymar, another spinner in this race. So many people are struggling for grip around this circuit. Not a lot of people with a lot of confidence. They're all over the road. Neymar's tyres absolutely cooked after that spin. That puts Cam then up into 8th, Graham back up into 9th place, and Tekken now inside the top 10. Back to the lead of the race. Perpetuum now has brought the gap up to 1.2 seconds with 1 lap to go. Scuba is going to win this race if it stays like this. Mashiro's going to get 2nd place in this race, and it's nearly, well, Recon, I was going to say Recon's within penalty range, but Recon has a penalty himself, so Recon's going to stay in 4th, but Perpetuum going for the move has kind of cost him really because of that contact. We wouldn't really put blame on either of them. It's kind of just the nature of the corner, but in the end, it's going to be Scuba that could benefit from it.
Yeah, it could indeed. In fact, Mashiro very nearly benefited. He just had a bit of a bad run, went a bit deep into the final chicane. Otherwise, he could have had a fantastic chance of getting ahead of Scuba. And with the way things are at the moment, with the time gaps, that might have been enough to actually give him the victory in this race. Further down the field, Neymar had another spin at Spoon, but he's been able to get away clear on his own. And should we say for 11th place, Tekken still closing up to the back of Graham at this moment in time. Like you said, there's been so many different parts of this track where we've seen drivers lose it. Neymar's spin was in a very weird place. Quite a long way out of the hairpin for a driver to lose the car as well. Perpetuum is pushing like crazy at this moment in time. He's got the gap up to 2.5 seconds relative to Mashiro, who is going to get a bit of a slipstream up towards 130R. So you would expect that gap to close ever so slightly, but he might lose a bit of time here going for Scuba. This could be really close into the final chicane on the final lap of the race. Is Mashiro thinking about a very late dive down the inside, just not able to pull it off. Scuba didn't really leave him a lot of room, but that's going to give Perpetuum the victory possibly. This is going to be so close on the line. I think Scuba's just going to take the win from Perpetuum, and Mashiro going for that move probably cost him a chance at second place.
I think fair enough to Mashiro, his reserve driver. He has absolutely nothing to lose. He wanted that victory so badly. I think even if he had gone for the move and made it stick, Perpetuum would have pulled out enough of a gap so that Perpetuum would have won anyway. But my word, right on the line. They left it. It was so close. Perpetuum was using all of that reserve of VRS that he had in his back pocket, and it just didn't work for him. Again, a penalty cost Perpetuum a race victory by the smallest of margins, and Scuba has broken the trend for Perpetuum winning from pole position. Scuba is the race winner. He picks up yet another race victory this season and now takes a further lead in the championship. It was down to 6 points, like you said, at the end of qualifying. It'll be back up to at least 11, I think, after this race. So Scuba comes away with this one from the race victory, but I'm wondering whether we might see Perpetuum maybe challenge that time penalty.
He might do. He's definitely got an opportunity to challenge that time penalty. I'm guessing one of his warnings was for the lap before, so the one before he won't be able to remove. That one he might just be able to ever so slightly. I doubt if Scuba gets a penalty for it, because it looked very clear that it was a racing incident, so we might see that swap around, and if it does, that of course means Scuba is only in the lead by 1 point, which would really make things interesting going into the final 4 races. And as you said as well, a great performance from Mashiro. Did seem to have a lot of pace on that final few laps.
He definitely did. I think as Scuba and Perpetuum were kind of focusing on each other, that just allowed Mashiro the opportunity to close in. And like you say, a little bit of a mistake on the Casio triangle at the end of lap 11 cost him the opportunity of maybe diving up the inside of Scuba and taking the race victory. But I'm sure Mashiro will still be happy with a podium position. Here is the final results then for you for round 18 of the season, the final race of the night. Scuba picks up the race victory then ahead of Perpetuum, who gets second place. Mashiro on the podium. Recon 4th from 16th on the grid. What a performance again from Recon, and he gets fastest lap of the race. That's much more like it. Faxland in 5th place ahead of Keeper. For 15th on the grid, he gets to 6th. A good recovery from him as well. Siege on the alternate strategy just didn't work for him. He didn't have the pace at the end. He gets 7th. Graham in 8th ahead of Tekken 9th. Cam gets 10th. He crossed the line in 8th, but dropped because of penalties. Neymar with a spin. Maze with a spin. Nathan out of the session as an AI car. Josh spinning into the barriers. Silas retiring early on in this race. Raukio retiring as well after contact with the wall at turn 18. And Honey Badger, after winning the first race of the night, out on the exit of 130R. What a chaotic race. And I mean, we said going into this one that it's difficult to overtake at Japan. Even if it is difficult to overtake, it still provides a great race.
I think that's part of the reason why it provides a great race. It's difficult, but it's not impossible in the way it is around Monaco, obviously. So there's always a chance to go for the move. But as we saw with Honey Badger, as we score with Scuba and Perpetuum for the lead of the race, chances are it's not going to be as straightforward. If the other driver decides to go for a defence, even with DRS, it is very difficult to make the overtake. And that's why we ended up with so many great battles throughout the field. And that probably contributed to some of the contact and some of the spins that we saw, just because you constantly can be under pressure around this circuit.
Yeah, definitely you are, and you've got to be on your weights all the time. You've got to be pushing. I think the best way around this track is to push. If you kind of back off a little bit around Suzuka, you lose your rhythm, you lose your momentum, and you're all over the road, and that's where spins can happen. So it's kind of trying to find that fine balance, and in today it looked like Scuba, Petch and Mashiro and Recon, you've got to say as well, are the ones that mastered that fine balance of running within the limits of the car and themselves. They get with the top 4 positions. Faxand as well, good recovery after Russia, but that is where we're going to end off today, guys. That was, I think, a great night of racing. Before we head off, though, driver of the day for you, Luke. Who is it?
Ooh, that is an interesting. I think just because he's managed to keep it clean penalty-wise, I'm going to go for Scuba. Kept it clean penalty-wise, got the fastest lap in the first race, and coped fairly well with the pressure. And fair play to him for letting Perpetuum get ahead of him, because I just think that was a racing incident. To be honest, I don't think in that situation I'd have given the place to Perpetuum. I'd have probably just tried to stay ahead. He did end up getting the win anyway, but yeah, great job from Scuba and Perpetuum. They're showing why they're the two championship rivals, and I so hope we get to see them in the remaining 4 races this season.
Yeah, I do too. That was a great night of racing between those two, and I think I'm going to have to agree with you on Scuba. I mean, Perpetuum, obviously, pace-wise, probably was the class of the field again tonight, but unfortunately, penalties again costing him both in Russia and here as well. So, yeah, I think I'm going to have to give it to Scuba as well. And you've got to say, arguably, Scuba's probably the slower of the two in the championship battle, but still comes away from this evening extending his championship lead only slightly, but does extend it ever so slightly. So good from him and a good night's racing from everyone as well. So that is where we're getting off the stream today, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in to League Racing TV for the first couple of rounds of the season of the year for the Sprint League. Tune in obviously to League Racing TV tomorrow for Divisions 2 and 3. They are back after a couple of weeks break over the Christmas period, and then Divisions 4 and 5 are back on Friday as well. CRC is obviously still running IndyCar on Sunday as well, so look out for those on driver streams as well for CRC, and then onto League Racing TV for the division races tomorrow and Friday. But from myself and Luke Etheridge, it is thank you very much for joining us, and we will see you this time next week. Goodbye.